Well, welcome. Hope it's good for you on a Wednesday night in Georgia or wherever you may be calling from or watching from. Dr. J. Calvin Tibbs with you, your purpose development coach. On Wednesday nights, we dedicate time with this outreach from heaven that is assigned to the earth to what we call purpose points. So if this is your first time joining us, the goal is to help you with your purpose. You got to know what it is. If you don't, you will before this broadcast is over. And then once that's done, you get better and you scale and you get better and you scale, which ultimately translates into you helping other people. So we're going to dive right in, say hello to everybody, enjoy the moment. We're going to pick up with where we were on last week, but not until we pray first. Father, we are so in need of you. It's real simple. You're God. We're not. You know more. So we need you, not just to learn things, not just to know things, but to be. So help us to be exactly what you called us to be when you thought about us, wrote our name in the book, listed the pages of our activity. And now we are here wanting to fulfill what's on the scroll. Help us now in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So what's exciting about what we are doing is it deals with you. You're here for a reason. You're here for a purpose. You're here not by accident. It doesn't matter how bad things were to get you in this position or how tough it has been. It matters to you and it matters to the people that are around you and are affected by you. But I don't want your story to be about how bad it was. I want your story to be about how good it is. And in order to get from how bad it was to how good it is, we have to change. We have to adjust. So we're asking the question, what is your story? With that in mind, everybody has a story, and everybody that you talk to is not necessarily interested. So let's just get that out of the way. There are going to be some people who are not interested in your story whatsoever because they're interested in their story. It's reasonably human nature. Now let's look back for a quick second at how we got here. So we were talking about not letting the feel-good stuff make you feel bad later. And we progressed through that over about 3 sessions, which you want to see on YouTube. Those videos are very powerful. And at the end, the last of them, we started talking about this concept. And this concept was that your leadership story is more powerful than your leadership style. And we put all the examples together about the DISC profile, and sometimes people don't get along well because of personality differences. But when you talk about a person's story, the story is completely different because a story draws you in. And we discussed the fact that, for example, the greatest story ever told about Jesus is still the story that elicits more reaction for or against just based on his story, because the story is greater than the style. And so it is with you. So to know what your story is, how you got here is only a part of it, because the prep that went into preparing you for this, to get you to this point, is not necessarily what is going to be required for where you're headed. I know that some things, all things are working together for the good. The question is, are the things that you've been relying on good? Are they working together? Are they good? Some things we don't have to go through, but they still work together for the good. So maybe if we can start living a life, a story that has more good connected to it. When I say good, I'm not talking about everything being perfect. I'm saying what's good for you is what you ought to be doing. If that's studying, if that's expanding, if that's humbling yourself, whatever it is, I don't know what it is for you, but whatever it is for you, you got to get good at allowing that to shape you. Because the trouble that you've gone through to get you to this point, which may be the summary of your story, may need to be adjusted based upon the way you listen and the way that you learn. So we're going to talk about, first of all, what is your story? And we're going to deal with the reality that some people don't want to hear your story. And then before it's over, we're going to talk about the strength of your story. Okay, so check this out now. Since everybody has a story and everybody does not want to hear it, let's talk about the power of what occurs in a lot of people's families, bedtime stories. I was told bedtime stories. I loved it too. When my mom would read the book, every now and then, my dad came in and did this, but it was principally mom. So when our children were growing up, when they were younger, we would talk about something. That was our story. Let's talk about something. So they would say, mom or dad, can we talk about something? They really didn't want to go to sleep. Okay, that was the point. They didn't want to rest. Most people don't want to rest, but they're tired. But they don't want to rest because they think, like most children, they're going to miss something. You are. Rest. Rest has to be a part of your story. And I'm not just talking about sleeping or napping. I'm talking about being all right in the space that has been created for you. I'll say that again. Are you okay with being you? If you are not okay with being you, you're not going to write the right story. You're not going to read the right story. You're not going to tell the right story. So the question of what is your story, you won't really know what it is if rest is not a part of your story. Now, I hear that high A personality individuals are also known as alpha dogs. I hear the D personality in the disc profile also talking about sleep is not important. Sleep is for cowards or whatever the case may be, or you can sleep when you die. And if you stop getting rest, you will probably die sooner. My point isn't just to the alpha dogs out there that it's about getting it done, getting it done, getting it done. What are you getting done? Because whatever it is you are doing should be a part of what you are being. And your being is a place where you can rest in knowing that you are that. You are that. This is the reason why people love vacations. This is the reason why the Vegas myth works. What happens in Vegas, the you that you don't want anyone to know about, or whatever it is, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. You know why that works like that? Because the goal is you get a chance to be you. Well, the animalistic part of us, which is the lower nature, is really not your story. It might have been what you've written. It might be the script that you read from, but that's not the story that was written about you to be like an animal. And I'm talking about animalistic in the sense that survival is all you're thinking about. Getting your way is all you're thinking of. Getting is what you're thinking about. Winning against all odds. And I'm not telling you winning is not a blessing. I'm trying to convey that if everything in your pages connects and evolves around you, that's not the right story. And if you can't rest until it's about you, that's not your story either. So rest is important, being able to be all right with being you, where you can sleep at night, where you know all is well with the world because you're doing the thing that makes sense. It's the thing that makes faith. It's the thing that makes meaning. And if you can get to that point, whether it is whatever the actions are, see, the actions, oftentimes people say, who are you? And they tell people what they do. The question wasn't, what do you do? The question is, who are you? And you can answer those questions by qualifying yourself to say, I am, and you fill in the blanks. Not what you do, I am, and then fill in the blanks. So let's move beyond bedtime stories, which is the concept of rest. You gotta rest, okay? You gotta sit. In fact, before you go to bed, it's been proven scientifically that you really don't want to watch TV. You don't want to be on social media, not for that last 30 minutes before you go to sleep. You want to take out a calendar. And even if it's blank, you want to point to a date and you want to, in your mind or even out loud, say, in your mind thinking out loud, say, by this point, because your mind will go to work, your brain will go to work, even probably giving you dreams to start walking out how to, by that date, get this, become that, accomplish whatever that may be. But if you're watching social media, your brain is trying to figure out what to do with what they said, what she said, what they are wearing, why you aren't wearing it, when you're going to buy that. You can't afford it. So your brain goes into overload trying to figure that stuff out. If you're watching the news, who knows what your brain is trying to figure out. But if you put that calendar in front of you and you look at a date and you say, by this time next year, by this time next month, next week, I will, then your mind goes to work to come up with solutions. And those solutions help you go into action, being what you should be doing. You with me? People buy you. They're not just buying your product, they're buying you. And what are you being to them? So you put that together, that's your bedtime story. Let's take a look at, you've heard this if you've been in sales before. Facts sell or tell, but stories sell. Facts tell, stories sell. Here we go with stories again. Why are stories important? And again, in my development some years ago, I was influenced to think that stories don't matter. People don't want to hear about no stories. They want to hear about, in my case, the exegete specifically. What does that scripture say? And go into the details of the definitions in the Greek and the Hebrew, depending upon which reference we were looking at, Old Testament, New Testament. And I bought that. I accepted that. Yeah, we need to go into some deep stuff about what that means on a deeper level in the origin, which is also true, but facts tell, stories sell. You don't remember people because of facts. You remember people because of stories. They were so fill in the blanks. The story of their life was fill in the blanks. Because facts, if you can accumulate them, that's great, but they must be turned into stories. If they don't turn into stories, they are not translatable. And if they're not translatable, then people cannot continue to follow because they don't see themselves in the story. Facts tell, stories sell. Facts come from the know-it-all category. Stories come from the fabric of life. You want to get good at knowing your story so that you can live your story, and then others will tell your story. When I'm talking to you about what is your story, I'm not even trying to get you to go around and knock on doors and call your friends and tell them how important you are since you've recently discovered this, if this is your deal. I'm really trying to get you to connect with, there is purpose behind why you were even born. That's your story. It should be being told by the actions of your life. The things that you say, in fact, I'm going to get to this in a second. The things that you say and the places that you go, the say and the way should line up. So let's go ahead and go there. Stories represent the narrative and the course. Stories represent the narrative and the course. Now, why is this important? Because if you're working a dead-end job or connected in non-married, dead-end relationships, or if your marriage is at a dead end, it could be because you both have stopped telling the story of why you came together and what you're supposed to be building. Once again, stories represent the narrative. The narrative is the script. The script is on the scroll. The scroll written before you were born. Psalms 139, verse 16, 17. You want to go there and read that. When you read that, you're going to see that there was something written about you before you lived a single page of your life, or based upon what's on the story. So knowing that you matter like this, and you're in a pandemic and you made it, or let's say you never came into contact with COVID, or let's say you came into contact and you're still living. Either way, you're living in a pandemic. Globally, the world is experiencing something that is happening. Probably, my goodness, I think the latest biggest thing that occurred, even if you go back to the world wars, every part of the world wasn't in the war. It really wasn't. They called it that because it was the East and the West, if you will. But the Middle East wasn't really fighting that war in the context of it. It was Europe. And I know you can call that the East, and I understand topography-wise, it's that, and we're the West. I get that. But the whole world wasn't, up and above and below weren't in it. Everybody was connected to the flood. And everybody seems connected with the pandemic. My point is, an epic global, get the point now, the epic global stage is worldwide, and you're still here. There's something about you that makes it needful for you to be here. It's your story. It's not your facts. It's your story. It's not your style. It's your story. What's your story? If you don't know your story, you might need to start writing. I got a pen for you. I can't pass it through the virtual world to get it to you. But the pages of what makes you, you You should be living those things. Even if you choose not to write them down, you got to come up with a way to recognize your life matters. The blood running warm in your veins is important. The footprint, the fingerprints that are uniquely yours belong to no one else. You are exclusive, and you don't know why you're here. Oh, that's unacceptable. That's just flat out unacceptable. Now, let's say you know why you're here. How much of your story can you improve upon? In other words, how much more can you blossom, unfold, come alive? How much more? Well, of course, a lot, right? That's where growth comes in. That's where we talk to you on Wednesdays as this outreach from heaven assigned to the earth through Kingdom Dominion Church is trying to get those on a practical level to do the thing that's necessary. And I'm going to tell you, one way to really do it is to sit in a quiet room and just think. Now, you can't have on your favorite song either for this. You got to think. You got to sit there and you got to think, where is my life? Where is my life in relation to where perhaps it ought to be? You may not even know the full story about where you should be, but how do you like the patterns that you're currently working with? Because they are putting you where you are right now. How do you like the patterns? How do you like the patterns that create distraction? You know, we went over this in an earlier video. Distraction is an action, just like procrastination. Procrastination invites distractions. We went over this because distraction is an action that pulls you away from your goal. So if you really want to move in the direction of why you are here, you have to stop being distracted. So think about, why am I at this point in my life? And when you consider that it can improve, then you start with baby steps, like turning the television off for 30 minutes a day when you used to watch. And I'm not trying to tell you to sacrifice yet. You are going to have to sacrifice. Don't get it wrong. That could be why things aren't where they could be, because sacrifice is not on your goal, because sacrifice is a distraction. Which sacrifice usually means what you could be doing, you're not doing, so that you will start doing something you should be doing. So some of us are just going to flat have to get rid of that, because the set or the story represents the setting of the course, or the story sets the course. If your course is always a little bit off because you won't follow through, or your course is always a little bit off because the narrative says so, but your actions say no, and you don't really move into what you should be doing because you're busy talking about it versus being about it, all that evolves around the same thing related to meaning. We talked about that earlier. It's got to mean something. Your story has got to mean something to you. You know, I was listening to someone the other day that was illustrating how they don't care. They just want what they want right now. And this guy was trying to convince him that, you know, if you think like that, then not only will your life not care, but the lives of others won't care either. Well, the process went on where the person finally was able to talk them into recognizing you do care. You just don't care about what we're talking about. You care about something else. When people stop caring at all, something's wrong. Don't get this wrong now. This situational ethics, where the ethic that is called for is governed by the situation. Understand the sense of that, but underneath that is basically, I do what I want and I don't want to have any accountability. That stuff's wrong. See, because you are your brother's keeper, because guess who else is a part of your story? Other people. And if you write out the people that you disagree with because you won't learn from them or you won't grow from them, I'm not talking about folks that are bad for you. I'm talking about folks you don't understand. And I don't know if you in your story have been misunderstood before. Some people mistake kindness for weakness. Some people mistake truth for preference. Some people mistake love for weakness. It's incredible what goes on in the minds of people. But I am trying to convey to you that in your story, you're going to have people who may or may not understand you. But you got to understand what you're here for, how you can improve, and you know why you're here. Why are you here? What you're here for, and how you can improve. You got to know that, and then you got to work through the maze of getting through all the distractions to stop you from being about that business. I want to tell you again, stories represent the narrative. the things you say. And stories set the course by those words to get you in that position. So I'm going to give you this final example before I move on to this next point here. You know, when you realize that you're here for more than just you, and then you realize perhaps that there's a sacrifice involved, because people will easily gravitate to people who keep feeding them, okay? Because being fed is a satisfying thing. But the reason even for food is not just satisfaction, which is great to have that satisfaction. I think all the senses are connected to, you know, the consumption of something that's good for you. But food ultimately is designed to create energy so that you can be about the business of why you ate the food. So you're not eating just to eat. You're eating, of course, for the fellowship, the koinonia, for rest. But that food comes into your body and it becomes chemically transformed and distributed throughout your body so that you can get into energy. And I'm going to tell you, you may want to consider eating, like the Germans do, your biggest meal at lunch, because you still have the rest of the energy needed in the day. Whereas if you eat the heaviest meal in the evening, you're likely sleepy, and there is no reason to exert energy because you're now heading towards the last part of your day. Just food for thought. I'm trying to convey that when you are considering how you are expending your energy, if you're expending energy in the direction of your story, life's going to matter. It's going to matter more, the decisions you make, the people you interact with. But if you're over in this area where all you do is what you do for money or just for you, you're not going to get the most out of it, which now moves me to the final point that we're going to discuss. Everybody good? I'm going to assume yes. Look at this. The evolution of meaning comes through the power of your personal story. The evolution of meaning comes through the power of your personal story. In other words, what we perceive to be truth, if it isn't truth, your story has got to recognize through evolving that that's just not the way it is. Like the world wants to pit blacks against whites, at least in America. In other countries, it's darker versus lighter. I mean, it's incredible how Satan gets away with using the same tricks on a different generation, and generations fall for it all the time. And then they categorize, they teach us to categorize based on identity politics. In other words, view the world through the identity that politicians tell you to view it through. You know, governments are from God, politicians are not. And I'm not talking about the person. I'm talking about the concept of making you out to be something that fits a party versus something that fits the person. That's why I'm trying to convey that your story, not the facts about whether you identify as this or that or the other, that's not where the power is. That's where the deception is. Because you ought to be able to disagree with a person that thinks differently from you than categorizing them as canceled. That's totally foolishness. That would presume that you are pure and 100% right, and they are evil and 100% wrong. And since we're dealing with humans on both levels, that's just flat out not true by itself. And why would one remain duped by a thought process that doesn't evolve beyond that? I'll say this to you again. The evolution of meaning comes through the power of your story. We've got to evolve. We've got to learn that things aren't as they used to be. I remember in junior high school, the song or the movie, the phrase in the movie or in the song, que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. I think it came from, I forgot the name of the movie. But anyway, and so I used to apply that at age 13 to my concepts as it related to girlfriends. Okay, I'm 13 years old in the 7th grade. Que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to see. Que sera, sera. It's not true. None of that's true. If I continued and didn't evolve, in my story, my personal story, in other words, if the evolution of meaning stayed, then my story would be directly affected by the falsehood that I adopted when I was a child. How many things do you think you have like that? How many ways do people make sure they stay out of relationship with other people because of stuff that happened way back when, and no one remembers but you and that person? See, if the power of forgiveness is not ever going to be used, then the evolution of your story won't receive power. And this is where people get old and senile, or old and sick and old and ineffective, no longer relevant. All they can talk about is the past. And I'm not just talking chronologically. I'm talking about physiologically, in terms of people's minds and their thinking psychologically. People just go into the same thing about what that group's like or what that group's like. The evolution of meaning. Let's just talk about that very, very briefly here in the last few minutes that we have. We talked about a revolution of values before, and an evolution of meaning, a revolution of values. Revolutions are revolts where you literally fight against. Revolution of values. You got to fight to see value in people that you disdain. You have to fight to see value in people that disagree with you. You have to fight to see that your life is worth living despite what has happened in your life. You have to fight to make sense out of things that don't make sense at all. That is a revolution of values. But if the values receive a revolution, then meaning must have an evolution. Evolutions. See, listen, evolutions of meaning are different in everybody's life. See, because some things mean something to you that don't mean anything to anybody else. But you got to evolve. You got to evolve in your meaning. Some of you were raised to feel as if you are nothing. Your points don't matter. You don't matter. They wish they hadn't had you. You have got to evolve in what that means. If what someone said about you, including authorities like an adult or people that are authority figures in your life, if their words were in error to the story that belongs when you rest. What's the story that belongs when you rest? When you sit and really think, are you not worth it? The answer is yes. Let me just answer that for some of you who may say, well, it doesn't matter. No, you better not take your life. Your life matters. You matter. But you've got to learn how to evolve in what things mean to you. It may not mean anything to them. They may not mean anything. You may not mean anything to other people, but you mean something to the Creator. You have to, again, evolve. There must be an evolution that comes through the power of your personal story. I will say that again. There must be an evolving. You've got to understand that just because you got dumped by your boyfriend in the 3rd grade, you matter. I know he came back around and dumped you in the 8th grade, and then another one like him dumped you in the 12th grade, and then you married and you got divorced. You have to evolve. When are you going to evolve? Don't think about their evolution. Think about your evolution. Your evolution, your walking in life must include looking at your value, your meaning. Meaning has got to evolve. You know, when you're 20, you're not thinking about the things you think about when you're 50. When you're 10, you're not thinking about the things you're thinking about at age 25. When you're in your 30s, you're way different than when you were in your teens because your body and your maturity evolved. You have to keep evolving so that the power of your story can emerge. Now, you just got to think about that and stop looking for a definition. Just think about it. Think about your life today. Your story has got to evolve. It's got to evolve. And how will it evolve? When meaning evolves. When I was a child, I think as a child, thought as a child, I reasoned as a child, I did things like a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. That's a man, a woman, whatever you used to think, you have to put it away if it is not strengthening the story of truth. So I hope that helps you. May the Lord bless you and keep you, and make his face shine upon you. May he be gracious to you, lift up the light of his countenance upon you, and give you his shalom. So what we went over tonight is a couple of things. We talked about the power of your story by asking, what is your story? We went over how bedtime stories are stories of rest, where you rest in the story of your life. We also went over the fact that facts tell. You got a bunch of them, but stories sell. If you're trying to help folks see who you are, don't give them a bunch of facts. Tell your story. If you're trying to understand who you are, don't go back in what you do. What you do is not your story. What you do is what you do. But your story sells. You've got to be sold on your own value, on your own net worth, on your own importance. Stories help bring that out. And then the final thing we said is that stories represent the narrative, because it's what you say and the way it sets the course. And when we finalized this, we talked about how the evolution of meaning comes through the power of your story, your personal story. So let's put that together and let's do something with it. Now, the story of giving and receiving is inherent in this process. You just received what was given. You may want to give someone this link, send it to them. You may want to go to kdchurch.org and give to this ministry and say, well done, continue the journey. You can do that by going to kdchurch.org. And when you go to kdchurch.org, you're going to see the give tab. There you can give and be a blessing. If I were you, I'd also give this some due consideration and let it bump up against the way you used to think. Like we talked about the value of different people who may be different from you. They may think differently from you, but it does not mean that you cannot value them. If you don't, you're not evolving in your meaning, which means your story is getting weaker. And we want you to be strong. So in the meantime, I hope that it was a blessing to you, and I hope you can find some value such that you can help some other people along the way. We look forward to seeing you the next time we get together on Purpose Points. See you soon. Bye.